When we think of the Wild West, the first images that come to mind are legendary shootouts, saloons, towns being built from scratch, shaping what would become one of the world's greatest powers, and of course the famous outlaws clashing with lawmen over control of those lands. But an important part of this history is often forgotten. During a time of expansion and progress spurred by the famous gold rush, human desires still found their place. After difficult days marked by conflict, there were moments of rest and pleasure, and this is where the story of today's video begins. The brothels, as they became known, were places where some women took charge and built stories that are still remembered today. The madams, as they were called, saw in that period a golden opportunity to start their businesses. Even in an era when women were often deprived of their rights, figures like Atoy, Fanny Porter, and Gertrudis Bardslöw dared to take risks, building solid reputations that made them influential in society, gaining prestige and wealth, an impressive achievement for any woman in such challenging times. But how did it all happen? What were these brothels like, and what really went on inside them? Who were these madams, and what set them apart? And what was the impact of these establishments on the Wild West? This, and much more, is what we'll explore in this video. So, put on your hat, fasten your belt, adjust your dress, and join us on another adventure through the famous era of the American Wild West. Welcome to History in Focus, your favorite history channel. How brothels emerged in the Wild West. It's 1848. The discovery of gold in California, and later in places like Colorado, Nevada, and South Dakota, draws thousands of men seeking quick riches to these underdeveloped areas. They endure harsh conditions and isolation, fueling high demand for entertainment and female companionship. As settlers, miners, cowboys, and railroad workers arrive, new towns spring up almost overnight, but often in a chaotic fashion. Many of these towns grow around gold, silver, and iron mines, or along trade routes and new railways, attracting mostly young, single men looking for work. The lack of basic services quickly leads to the establishment of saloons, taverns, and inevitably, brothels. Many of these places start as cabins or tents where women offer their services, but over time, they become more organized and integrate into the daily life of these new towns. With far more men than women, demand for entertainment and female companionship is exceptionally high. To put it in perspective, there were towns where for every 1,000 men, there were only a dozen women, or even fewer. In this environment, some women saw an opportunity to enter the market, whether due to limited options or in pursuit of financial independence, and began moving to these regions. Initially, their work was informal, carried out in taverns and saloons where they served drinks and offered companionship in exchange for money. Over time, the activity grew more professional, and madams began establishing brothels, places where women could live and work under the supervision of these managers. Soon, these women began earning in a single day what would have taken them a week as factory workers or shop clerks. Of course, there were many risks involved, but in the Wild West, women faced the same level of danger as men. Communities, rules, and laws were still being formed, which meant that crime and risky work were common, posing potentially fatal risks regardless of gender or profession. Brothels ranged in quality, from large, luxurious mansions in bigger cities like San Francisco and Denver to small wooden cabins in frontier towns. Typically, they were located in areas known as red light districts, away from the neighborhoods of the elite and the families who were also starting to settle in the West. Additionally, these highly profitable businesses played an important role in the local economies. They paid taxes and licensing fees, contributing to municipal funds and helping to finance infrastructure and public services. Brothels also drew patrons who spent money on local goods and services, making them economic pillars in these growing communities. In the end, society viewed these establishments as a necessary evil that helped prevent more serious crimes by offering a controlled outlet for men's needs, given the shortage of women in the region. Despite moral opposition from some groups, the need to maintain social and economic order usually prevailed. What brothels were like? Brothels varied widely in style and class, from the luxurious parlor houses to the modest cribs. In parlor houses, everything was designed to impress. The atmosphere was sophisticated, with imported furniture, velvet curtains, expensive rugs, and even European artwork. The women working in these places, often called ladies of the night or courtesans, were known for their elegance and charm. These establishments catered to wealthy and influential men, politicians, businessmen, and army officers, charging high prices for luxury and exclusivity. Outwardly, however, these houses of pleasure maintained discretion. The only sign of their nature was a lantern or red light by the entrance, subtly signaling the type of service offered. This is where the term red light district originated. Even in larger buildings with balconies where women might stand to attract customers, the facades were plain and respectable, hinting at their purpose only to those who knew what to look for. The signs, though refined, were discreet, with names displayed in an elegant script. These high-class brothels were often located in bustling areas near saloons and gambling houses, but distanced from more respectable zones, ensuring clients' privacy. On the other hand, cribs were simple and modest. These establishments, often small shacks or tents, provided only the basics, a bed and perhaps a table. Many of these shacks were occupied by soiled doves, older women who, after losing their place in high-class brothels, turned to these locations to survive. Some of them were famous in their prime, but now lived on society's margins. Cribs attracted a different clientele, typically low-income laborers like miners, cowboys, and railroad workers looking for an affordable, no-frills experience. Unlike parlor houses, cribs were located in discreet, out-of-the-way areas, often known only by word of mouth. In the end, cribs served those content with the bare essentials, where many aging and undervalued soiled doves found their last place of work. Meanwhile, parlor houses remained luxurious refuges, reserved for ladies of the night at the height of their careers and those who could afford the privilege. Services and pricing. In the Wild West, high-class brothels catered to wealthy and influential clientele, including merchants, politicians, and high-ranking officers. These establishments offered more than just companionship. They featured comfortable accommodations, live music, gourmet menus, and a selection of fine cigars, full-bodied bourbon, and the finest liquors and wines. The women wore fashionable attire, and fresh linens were placed between each appointment. In these sophisticated settings, clients could enjoy champagne dinners and sing with the girls around the piano. In these high-end houses, services were by appointment only. The women's rooms were usually located on the second floor if the building had one. Each house typically employed 6 to 12 women, along with the madam, who personally selected which clients she would attend to. These brothels prioritized discretion, offering private entrances for those who preferred not to be seen in such places. A significant portion of these brothels' profits came from the high-priced drinks served. Sometimes the madam kept all the profit from alcohol sales. In other cases, she offered a small commission to the women, encouraging them to promote the more expensive drinks. The most successful madams maintained a strict code of respectability on the ground floor. They required the women to wear corsets downstairs and prohibited unrefined behavior. The cost of an encounter at a high-end house ranged from $25 to $50, which today would be equivalent to $800 to $1,600. This price reflected the luxury and exclusivity offered. Some highly respected and renowned madams like Pearl de Vere from Cripple Creek, Colorado, charged significantly more for select clients. On special occasions, Pearl de Vere would charge up to $1,000 for a night. a staggering sum equivalent to about $33,000 today, reserved for only the wealthiest clients. Payment was usually made in cash, but in mining regions, precious metals like gold or silver bars were also used as currency. Some brothels extended credit to regular or high-status clients, though this was rare due to the risk of non-payment. Below this high standard were middle-class brothels. They weren't as elegantly furnished, but still offered a warm atmosphere. Clients could have a drink and chat with the woman before heading to a room. Services included alcoholic beverages, games, music, and dancing. The clientele was generally made up of merchants, craftsmen, and skilled workers, with prices ranging from $2 to $10, or about $65 to $330 today. A step down were the volume brothels, where the furniture was worn and the rooms were shabby. Women sat in small cubicles, calling out to clients passing by on the street. These women were generally older and less attractive, often relying on drugs and alcohol. They worked in shifts, and on busy days, a quick working woman might serve 25 or more men. Next were the cribs, rows of small wooden buildings located in the most rundown parts of the red light districts. Each of these buildings had a small front sitting area and a bedroom at the back, just large enough for an iron bed, a wash basin, a stove, and a small trunk. Women placed a piece of oilcloth at the foot of the bed, as clients often didn't remove their boots during the visit. On a busy night, a fast-working woman might serve up to 80 men, with each service lasting only minutes. These places catered to low-income workers like miners and cowboys, and prices were significantly lower, ranging from 50 cents to $2 per service, equivalent to about $17 to $65 today. Considering that the average daily wage at the time was $1 to $2, these cribs were the most affordable and therefore the most frequented by the majority of workers. Lastly, there were the street prostitutes. These women, lacking youth or charm, waited in shadowed doorways where dim lighting concealed their appearance. They worked for nearly any amount, sometimes accepting payment as modest as the cost of a single drink. The role of madams. The women who took charge of brothels in the Wild West, known as madams, were truly the heart of these establishments. They managed everything, from finances to the hiring and supervision of workers, ensuring that the brothel ran smoothly and profitably. This involved carefully controlling spending on clothing, beverages, and supplies, while closely overseeing incoming funds. With strong negotiation skills, madams kept their brothels stocked and maintained a strict budget. Selecting the women who would work in the brothel was also a duty of the madam, who personally chose those who could follow the rules and deliver good service. To maintain order and an appropriate atmosphere, madams enforced strict codes of conduct. Workers were expected to be polite to clients, avoid any behavior that might incite disputes, and follow guidelines for handling difficult situations, such as dealing with drunk or violent clients. In many brothels, women were not allowed to consume alcohol with clients or had clear limits on interactions, which helped maintain a controlled environment. Madams also set specific dress codes. Workers were often required to wear elegant clothing, typically silk or satin dresses adorned with jewelry and feathers to attract clients. This presentation aimed to convey sophistication and allure, even in more modest brothels. Clothing also signaled the level of service, with some wearing more extravagant outfits to suggest a higher-priced, exclusive experience. Additionally, madams determined prices, hours, and organized shifts to ensure the brothel was always open, especially during peak nights. They were always nearby, ready to resolve issues quickly as they arose. Within the brothel, the madame was the ultimate authority, ensuring that the premises remained clean and well organized. When conflicts arose, whether between workers or with clients, she was the one who stepped in to mediate. Security was another constant concern, and many madams hired guards or made deals with influential people in town to protect both the business and the women working there. They also negotiated with local authorities, sometimes paying bribes to ensure the brothel could continue operating smoothly. Through their adept management, many madams earned the respect of notable figures, even within a society that did not always value their profession. Over time, many madams were able to accumulate wealth, investing not only in their brothels, but also in real estate and other ventures, such as saloons. With their business acumen, they became prominent figures in the growing communities, contributing to local development. The success of a brothel depended directly on the madam. Her ability to maintain order, manage finances, and negotiate with authorities made her the key to the establishment's operation and prosperity. Famous madams. Ah Toy. Ah Toy stands out as one of the most intriguing madams of the Wild West, known especially for being one of the first Chinese women to open a brothel in San Francisco. Born in Canton, China, she emigrated to the United States in 1848. During her voyage, she lost her husband and became the lover of the ship's captain, who provided her with a generous sum of gold. Upon her arrival in San Francisco, Ah Toy used this opportunity and money to start her own business. Ah Toy's establishment was able to evade closure during a crackdown by the Vigilance Committee. While many brothels faced shutdowns during that period, Ah Toy's business continued without significant interruptions. Though exact figures are unknown, Ah Toy's brothels were highly profitable, showcasing her adeptness at business and growing her influence. Her financial status and connections allowed her to thrive in a marginalized profession, earning her both respect and power within San Francisco society. Mattie Silks. Mattie Silks is one of the most iconic madams of the Wild West, renowned not only for her beauty, but also for her sharp business acumen. Born in Pennsylvania in 1845, she began her career at the age of 19 in Springfield, Illinois. Although she always claimed that she never worked as a prostitute, her talent for managing brothels quickly set her apart in the industry. After opening establishments in Dodge City, Kansas, and Georgetown, Colorado, Mattie gained notoriety for her innovative marketing strategies. One of her most striking methods involved parading her employees through the streets in luxurious attire, which attracted attention and created an air of glamour around her brothels, helping her stand out in a competitive market. Her fame peaked in 1877 when she became embroiled in a dramatic incident with her rival Madame Kate Fulton over the affections of Cortez Thompson, a charming man known for his tumultuous relationships. This rivalry culminated in a rare duel between the two women, an occurrence typically reserved for men at that time. Legend has it that both women fired shots, but neither was injured. However, Cortez was grazed during the confrontation. Following the duel, tensions escalated into a physical fight between Mattie and Kate, resulting in Kate leaving the city with a broken nose and a sense of humiliation. In contrast, Mattie not only stayed, but also continued her relationship with Cortez, a bond that lasted for many years. He, known for losing fortunes at the gambling tables, often relied on Mattie's financial support, highlighting the depth of their connection. Throughout her career, Mattie Silks stood out as one of the few madames to acquire valuable properties, including an impressive mansion in Denver, an unusual achievement for women of her time. Her ability to accumulate considerable wealth not only helped her survive in a male-dominated environment, but also allowed her to thrive, establishing her as a respected and influential figure. These accomplishments, along with her success as a businesswoman, solidified Mattie Silks as a legend of the Wild West, securing her place among the most notable madams of her era. Fanny Porter. Fanny Porter faced significant challenges before becoming one of the most successful madams of the Wild West. After losing her husband under difficult circumstances, she decided to change her fate, using her intelligence and charm to build a true empire in the world of brothels. Taking advantage of the opportunities that frontier life offered, Fanny opened a sophisticated and elegant brothel in San Antonio, focused on luxury and exclusivity. Her goal was always to provide a refined experience for her clients. At Fanny's brothel, chilled champagne was served in crystal glasses, and the beds were adorned with silk sheets, while soft carpets covered the floors. For the most special clients, she offered VIP treatment, ensuring everyone felt privileged while visiting her establishment. As a shrewd businesswoman, Fanny knew how to avoid trouble with the police while her business thrived. She maintained cordial relationships with influential figures in the city, allowing her brothel to operate with minimal interference. Often, her establishment was disguised as a boarding house, helping to conceal its true activities. Fanny also made it a point to hire young, attractive women, ensuring they were always clean, well-dressed, and prepared to offer high-quality service. Fanny's brothel became a meeting place for some of the most infamous outlaws of the Wild West, including members of the Hole-in-the-Wall gang, such as Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, who frequented the location and occasionally used it as a hideout. Fanny never turned these criminals over to the authorities, establishing herself as a reliable ally to the outlaws. This connection with bandits not only increased her notoriety, but also reinforced her status as a powerful woman in a male-dominated society. Despite various police investigations, Fanny was never arrested. Her skill in maintaining discretion and protecting her most wanted clients helped her avoid legal complications. Thanks to her talent for navigating between the law and the underworld, along with her attention to detail and loyal clientele, Fanny Porter established herself as one of the most successful and influential madams of her time, leaving a remarkable legacy in the history of the Wild West. Gertrudis Barceló. Gertrudis Barceló, widely known as Madame Toules, was a wealthy, independent, and cultured woman. At the age of 23, when she married, she insisted on keeping her maiden name and ensured that all her assets remained in her name, an unusual choice for women of her time. In the early 1810s, she and her husband opened a gambling establishment in Santa Fe, where she quickly gained recognition for her skill in card games, especially the game of Monte. Gertrudis was so adept that on multiple occasions, she used her moves to influence local disputes and negotiations. Her mastery in gambling earned her a considerable fortune, elevating her social status and securing her respect. After her husband's passing, Barceló used her charm and intelligence to persuade wealthy businessmen to help her open Santa Fe's first brothel. Her establishment attracted an elite clientele, including military officers, politicians, local leaders, and even clergy members. With her charismatic personality and refined education, Madame Toules attended parties and social gatherings alongside Santa Fe's upper class. She was one of the few women to freely mingle with influential men, actively participating in political discussions and contributing to local decisions. Beyond her business success, Gertrudis is remembered for her generosity. During economic crises in Santa Fe, she funded public works and offered aid to the poor, gaining the respect and admiration of the community. She also used her wealth to support the Hispanic community, further solidifying her position as one of the region's most influential figures. According to legend, Gertrudis Barceló is the reason brothel owners began to be called madams. Her commanding presence and the respect she earned made her name synonymous with authority in brothels, leaving an indelible mark on history. Dora Dufran. Born in 1868, Dora Dufran began her career at a young age, using her beauty and charm to build a successful path in the world of brothels. Ambitious and determined, Dora opened her first brothel at 22 in 1890, aiming to make it the best in the region. Her success wasn't only due to her appearance, her business acumen and drive also played a crucial role. In 1895, Dora married Joe Dufran, a local merchant who had fallen in love with her. Unlike many men of the time, Joe supported Dora's ambitions without interfering in her business. With his support, Dora expanded her operations, opening brothels in Deadwood, Lead, and Belforche in South Dakota. Dora kept her brothels appealing and well organized, frequently rotating workers among her establishments. At her peak, she reportedly managed up to 4 brothels across multiple cities. She also prioritized hygiene, an uncommon practice at the time, and set strict codes of conduct for her employees, ensuring a clean, safe environment. These standards made her establishments known for high-quality service and a secure atmosphere. An interesting fact about Dora is her love for cats. Each of her brothels housed numerous cats, which she cared for lovingly. Her famous collection of felines led to the term cat house becoming slang for brothels. Thanks to Dora, this expression became popular in the Wild West. Life of brothel women. In the Wild West, the lives of brothel women were marked by challenges and hardship. Many young women turned to prostitution as the only way to escape poverty, illness, and abuse found in civilized society. They were known by various names: soiled doves, painted ladies, sporting women, prairie nymphs, and more. The most famous term, soiled doves, refers to doves as symbols of freedom and purity, with soiled indicating the depravity society attributed to their line of work. In more common brothels, women wore simple, revealing outfits, often worn out and made from lower quality fabrics, as these establishments didn't provide resources for expensive clothing. In high-end brothels catering to the elite, they dressed in elaborate clothing with lace details, low necklines, tight corsets, and voluminous skirts. White dresses were common and became a symbol of women working in these places. However, unlike the lives of some madams, and contrary to what some films may portray, the lives of most of these women were far from glamorous. Their average age was around 23, and few remained in the profession past 30. Contraceptives like condoms and diaphragms existed as early as the late 1850s, but were expensive and out of reach for most. Some women turned to herbal abortifacients and drugs like female pills and regulating tablets to terminate unwanted pregnancies. But these methods were risky and could be fatal. Violence was a constant threat for women in brothels, both physically and psychologically. They often had no protection from abuse, and reports of mistreatment were rarely taken seriously by authorities, as society generally looked down on them. This violent environment only reinforced the cycle of exploitation and vulnerability, making it difficult for them to escape. In addition to violence, sexually transmitted diseases were a constant worry and a severe threat to their health. Without access to adequate medical care or prevention information, many contracted infections that led to serious complications. Even when sick, they were often forced to keep working, worsening their situation. A few women managed to climb to wealth and prominence as successful madams. Others married or saved enough money to transition to domestic life or pursue a different career. However, most ended up in poverty. Leaving this life was extremely challenging, but some tried to escape in various ways. One way was to save as much money as possible, although this was difficult due to high costs and the fact that brothel owners kept a large portion of the profits. Others sought relationships with wealthier clients, hoping that these men would support them financially and offer an alternative to brothel work. Marriage represented a path to a respectable life for many, allowing them to leave prostitution behind. In the Wild West, it was considered impolite to inquire about someone's past, and most people were too busy to care. Finding records on these women is difficult, as many left little trace. It was common for them to change names, and while they sometimes appeared in local publications, it's challenging to know who they were before or what became of them after disappearing from newspapers. If brothels kept records, they're long gone now. Lists of clients were kept strictly confidential and likely destroyed soon after. Since discussing the red light district and its workers was considered improper, we have little evidence of what life was truly like for women working in these environments. In the Wild West, sexually transmitted diseases posed a serious public health issue, especially with the rise of brothels in frontier towns. It's estimated that up to 90% of women working in these establishments contracted some form of STD during their career. A lack of adequate medical knowledge, poor sanitation, and a constantly moving population all contributed to the spread of these diseases. Syphilis, in particular, was one of the most feared due to its severe and potentially fatal symptoms. With no effective treatment available, up to 25% of those infected could lose their lives due to the disease. Gonorrhea was also common, with infection rates estimated at about 50% among brothel workers. These diseases affected not only the women's health, but were also transmitted to clients who could carry the infections to other communities and their own families. Brothels were conducive environments for disease transmission due to the high turnover of clients and lack of preventive measures. Many clients were transient workers, like miners, cowboys, and soldiers, who traveled from town to town. Personal hygiene was compromised by a lack of clean water and proper sanitation facilities. Furthermore, condom use was extremely rare. Although animal gut condoms had been available since the 18th century, they were expensive, uncomfortable, and not easily accessible, costing the equivalent of $1 each at a time, when a common laborer's daily wage was around $2. Women rarely received education on health or disease prevention methods. Myths and misconceptions were common. For example, it was believed that drinking whiskey or washing with homemade solutions after intercourse could prevent infections. Due to the high number of partners, some women served up to 20 clients per day. The risk of contracting and spreading STDs was extremely high. Additionally, poor nutrition and living conditions weakened immune systems, increasing the likelihood of infection. Medical understanding at the time was poor and often based on incorrect theories. Doctors lacked precise diagnostic methods and frequently misidentified STD symptoms as other conditions. For example, late-stage syphilis could be wrongly diagnosed as rheumatism or unrelated neurological issues. Available treatments were ineffective and, in some cases, dangerous. Mercury was the most common remedy for syphilis despite its toxicity. The popular saying, "A night with Venus, a lifetime with Mercury," reflected the risks of treatment. In upscale brothels, some madams hired doctors to conduct regular checkups on the workers, but this was the exception, not the rule. Most women relied on home remedies or healers, spending a significant portion of their earnings, sometimes up to 50%, on treatments that rarely worked. Social stigma surrounding STDs prevented many from seeking proper medical help, fearing ostracism or the loss of their jobs in brothels. It's estimated that these women's life expectancy was reduced by up to 15 years due to poor health conditions and untreated diseases. Besides the physical toll, there was also psychological suffering due to social isolation and a lack of future prospects. The spread of STDs significantly impacted the broader community. Infected men would pass diseases to their wives and partners, leading to an increase in cases among women outside of prostitution. Local authorities sometimes attempted to implement measures to control STD spread. Cities like San Francisco and New Orleans introduced laws requiring regular medical exams for brothel workers and licenses for such establishments. However, enforcement was inconsistent and often undermined by corruption. The economic impact of STDs was substantial. Medical costs could consume up to 30% of an infected worker's earnings, and the inability to work due to debilitating illness affected entire sectors of the local economy. The loss of productivity and rising healthcare costs strained the already fragile social and economic structures of Wild West communities. With a population of approximately 8 million in the Wild West by 1880, it's estimated that 5% to 10% of the population was infected with syphilis, which represented between 400,000 to 800,000 people. According to studies, if left untreated, syphilis could be fatal for 10% to 20% of those infected. Thus, syphilis alone may have caused up to 160,000 deaths. It's important to remember that other STDs could also be lethal, and that there was a high level of underreporting, as these diseases were often misdiagnosed. Many deaths caused by STDs were attributed to other causes due to limited medical knowledge and lack of accurate diagnoses. The end of the brothels. As towns in the Wild West grew and laws became more organized, the landscape of brothels changed. During the early years of expansion, these establishments thrived, meeting the demand from lonely workers such as miners and cowboys, and became part of the economy and daily life in growing towns. However, as colonization advanced and towns became more stable, a new social and economic phase emerged, bringing changes that directly affected brothels. With the arrival of more families, churches, and schools, conservative values began to dominate these towns. What was once considered necessary for the local economy was now questioned by new residents, who viewed brothels as obstacles to progress and respectability. By the early 20th century, moral reform movements aimed at eliminating social vices such as prostitution, gambling, and alcohol consumption began to emerge. Temperance movements and religious groups pressured authorities to close these establishments. The media, especially newspapers of the time, published sensational stories about the red light districts, increasing the pressure on the government to take action. This mix of social, religious, and economic factors led to the decline of brothels that had once flourished in the Wild West. The passing of the Mann Act in 1910 marked a turning point. The law, which aimed to combat interstate sex trafficking, also made it difficult for local brothels to operate. Although its primary focus was on trafficking, the legislation affected prostitution activities, forcing many brothels to shut down. Additionally, law enforcement became more organized, and raids and arrests of madams, workers, and clients became frequent. World War I also influenced the closure of brothels. The government, concerned with the health of soldiers, began shutting down brothels near military bases to protect troops from sexually transmitted diseases. Prohibition, implemented in 1920, further impacted these establishments. Many brothels relied on alcohol sales as a source of income. Without that revenue, and with the increased risks of operating illegally, many were forced to close. Under these pressures, many brothels shut down, and madams faced difficult decisions. Some attempted to move their operations to rural or less regulated areas, while others went underground. Prostitution did not disappear, but instead became more dangerous, with higher risks of violence and exploitation. As towns sought to project a more respectable image to attract new residents and investment, closing brothels became part of that process. Although prostitution did not vanish, it was driven underground, changing the dynamics of communities where brothels once played a significant role. This transition marked the end of one era and the beginning of another in U.S. history, reflecting the social and moral changes that would shape the country in the decades to come.